Welcome to our deep dive into React's useDeferredValue hook.
Yeah,
You want to build super responsive apps where even complex updates don't cause lag, right?
right.
That's where this hook comes in.
Yep.
We'll uncover not just what useDeferredValue is,
Mhm.
but why it's crucial for a great user experience.
It's all about prioritizing updates
Okay.
and making sure slower components don't drag down the whole app.
So how does it actually work?
Well, it creates a deferred copy of a value,
Okay.
letting React decide which updates need to happen immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Think of it like this. You're working on a time-sensitive task,
Okay.
and someone asks you a question that can wait.
Yeah.
You make a note to get back to them,
Right.
but your focus stays on the priority.
Uh-huh.
React does the same thing with updates,
Yeah.
keeping the UI responsive.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Does this have anything to do with showing the stale content the source mentioned
Yes.
while the new information loads?
Exactly.
Right.
That's one of the key benefits.
Yeah.
Instead of a loading spinner,
Right.
you can keep showing the previous content,
Yeah.
maybe slightly dimmed,
Okay.
while the fresh data loads in the background.
Mm-hmm.
It feels much smoother to the user.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like when a website shows you a cached version of a page
Right.
while it loads the latest updates.
Yeah.
You get to see something immediately,
Yep.
even if it's not completely up to date yet.
Right.
But wouldn't this be confusing for users? How do they know what they're seeing is out of date?
That's where visual cues come in.
Okay.
You can dim the stale content,
Okay.
add a subtle animation,
Uh-huh.
or even a simple label.
Right.
The key is to give the user enough feedback without disrupting their flow.
Okay, so we're avoiding those jarring loading states.
Right.
But this sounds like more than just a visual trick. What's going on behind the scenes?
Use deferred value is closely tied to how React handles rendering.
Okay.
It's a two-step process. First, React re-renders the component with the old stale value,
Right.
which keeps the interface responsive.
Uh-huh.
Then behind the scenes, it tries another re-render,
Okay.
this time with the new value.
So it's like a two-phase update.
Exactly.
What if the second re-render takes a long time?
Here's the really clever part.
Okay.
That second re-render, the one happening in the background,
Yeah.
can be interrupted
Oh.
if the user does something else before it's finished,
Right.
like typing in a search bar.
Uh-huh.
React can abandon the slow update and start a new one.
It's like React is constantly evaluating which updates are most important and making sure they get handled first.
Exactly.
That sounds way more sophisticated than simply delaying updates.
Yeah,
Speaking of which, our source mentioned debouncing and throttling.
right.
How does useDeferredValue compare to those techniques?
Those methods can be helpful for certain optimizations,
Okay.
but when it comes to rendering use, deferred value has a distinct advantage. It works with React's rendering cycle, adapting to device performance.
So instead of just delaying every update,
Right.
useDeferredValue intelligently manages them,
Exactly.
making sure the user experience stays smooth.
Precisely.
It's all about providing a seamless and responsive experience for the user,
Yes,
even when dealing with complex updates or slower components.
that's right.
This is already making a lot of sense.
Good.
But how does useDeferredValue work with components that are inherently slow to render?
Yeah,
For example, a large, complex chart. I know our source material talks about that.
that's a great point.
Yeah.
And it brings us to another important concept,
Okay.
the memo function in React.
So if I understand correctly, useDeferredValue helps to prioritize updates
Right.
and even allows React to show stale content
Yeah.
to maintain a smooth user experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still curious about how it handles components
Okay.
that are naturally slow to render, like
Yeah.
a complex data visualization. Our source material mentioned using React's memo function in this context.
Yes.
Can you explain how that fits in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Memo is a crucial piece of the puzzle
Okay.
when you're optimizing with useDeferredValue.
Uh-huh.
Basically, memo tells React to avoid re-rendering a component
Okay.
unless its trops have actually changed.
So it's like a signal to React saying, hey, don't waste time re-rendering this
Exactly.
unless something important has changed.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is particularly important during that initial re-render
Okay.
with the stale value we discussed earlier,
Uh-huh.
since the props of the slow component haven't technically changed yet.
Right.
At that point,
Yeah.
memo prevents it from re-rendering unnecessarily.
Ah, I see. So memo acts like a gatekeeper,
Yes.
ensuring that the slow component only re-renders
Right.
when it absolutely has to,
Yeah.
which frees up resources for React to handle other updates.
Exactly.
But wouldn't we achieve a similar outcome
You would think so.
By simply debouncing or throttling the updates? Right.
To the slow component directly.
That's a common question.
Okay.
And it's important to understand the distinction.
Right.
While debouncing and throttling can be effective for limiting how often a function is called,
Right.
they don't integrate as seamlessly
Okay.
with React's rendering cycle as useDeferredValue does.
I'm starting to see that useDeferredValue is more than just a simple delay mechanism. It's about working in harmony with how React operates under the hood.
Precisely.
Okay, cool.
Debouncing while throttling could still introduce those moments of lag because they essentially pause everything while waiting to update.
Yeah.
useDeferredValue, on the other hand, allows React to continue rendering other parts of the application while those slower updates happen in the background.
Interesting.
It's like having separate lanes on a highway.
Okay.
So faster traffic isn't held back by slower vehicles.
That analogy really helps.
Good.
So it's not just about delaying updates,
but about how those delays are managed in a way that keeps the entire application responsive.
Exactly.
And here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
useDeferredValue takes into account the user's device capabilities.
It does.
On a powerful machine, the deferred re-render might happen almost instantly.
Right.
So the user wouldn't even notice the optimization.
Correct.
But on a less powerful device, useDeferredValue adjusts accordingly, ensuring that the UI remains responsive, even if those background updates take a little longer.
Exactly.
So it's like having a built-in performance tuner that automatically adjusts based on the user's hardware.
Exactly. It adapts to provide the best possible experience, no matter the device.
This is fascinating.
It is.
But are there any situations where useDeferredValue might not be the best approach? Or any potential downsides we should be aware of?
That's a great question.
Okay.
It's important to remember that useDeferredValue doesn't magically make slow components faster.
Right.
It simply changes their priority in the rendering process.
So we still need to optimize our components as much as possible.
Yes.
And useDeferredValue is more of a complementary tool
Exactly.
for managing how those components are updated.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's not a cure-all for performance issues.
Gotcha.
And another thing to keep in mind is that useDeferredValue is generally most effective for updates that are triggered by user actions, like typing or scrolling.
Right.
It might not be as beneficial for updates that happen automatically in the background.
It sounds like useDeferredValue is a powerful tool.
It is.
But like any tool, it's important to use it appropriately.
Yes.
And understand its limitations.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And speaking of using it appropriately,
Yeah.
there are some really interesting and less obvious ways to leverage useDeferredValue beyond what we've discussed so far.
Okay.
It can be used for much more than just handling slow components.
Now you've really piqued my curiosity.
Good.
I'm eager to hear about these more advanced use cases.
Right.
You mentioned some less obvious use cases for useDeferredValue.
Right.
What are some examples of how it can be used beyond just managing slow components?
One fascinating area is animations.
Okay.
Imagine you have a complex animation triggered by user interaction. By using useDeferredValue,
Right.
you can delay the animation's start until after the initial re-render with the stale content.
So the animation doesn't have to compete with the initial rendering,
Right.
leading to a smoother visual experience.
Exactly.
Are there other examples like this where useDeferredValue shines in unexpected ways?
Think about components that perform heavy computation or data processing in the background.
Right.
By deferring their updates, you prevent them from blocking the main thread and keep the UI responsive while those calculations run.
That's a great point. Users might not even realize those intensive processes are happening, which contributes to a much better experience.
That's the real power of useDeferredValue.
Yeah.
It enables seamless experiences where users can interact without interruption, even when complex operations are underway.
Right.
It's about optimizing the overall feeling of responsiveness.
It sounds like useDeferredValue is a valuable tool.
It is.
For any React developer who wants to build highly performant and user-friendly applications.
I encourage everyone to experiment with useDeferredValue and see how it can enhance your applications.
Yeah.
Try it in various scenarios.
Right.
Push its boundaries. And you might be surprised by its versatility.
This deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
Well, thank you.
useDeferredValue is definitely something I'll be exploring further.
Great.
Any final thoughts for our listeners as we wrap up?
Remember, understanding the why behind a technique is just as important as knowing the what we've like.
Right.
We've uncovered the inner workings of use-deferred value.
Yeah.
Now it's up to you to apply this knowledge and build amazing responsive React experiences.
Thank you for taking us on this deep dive. Until next time.